Dana Hart, president of the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, you have one of the most iconic buildings in East Tennessee, short of the Sun Sphere. Going past the Hall of Fame is just one of those, what is that places. Let's talk about your journey. How did you even get into women's sports tourism?
It's a very interesting story. I moved to Knoxville about 25, 26 years ago. We chose to move to Knoxville. It was a choice. And it wasn't like a job transfer or anything like that. We seriously made the choice to move to Knoxville. And I had worked in retail for many years in Nashville prior to that, and had transferred with my retail position and realized, I didn't really want to give up my evenings and weekends long term. I had a 3-year-old at the time, and just not what worked for my family. So I took a job with a national staffing service, totally enjoyed my time there. And one of my customers said to me, we really need to get you to this other place. And so I met with Gloria Ray, who was the president CEO of the Greater Knoxville Sports Corporation at that time. And she said, we would love to have you at the Hall of Fame. And one of the ladies that was the director of sales at that time had worked for me at the staffing service. And so that's kind of how the connection happened. And I had always said at a certain point, I wanted to do something that gave back to the community and had a purpose. I was making money for someone on the corporate level, but it wasn't fulfilling. I knew there was more that I could do where I could give back. And so this opportunity came to me, and it was, yes, I love basketball. It's probably not my favorite sport.
And I was going to ask, did you ever play a sport or anything?
I played basketball younger, much younger. Obviously with my height, I wasn't a standout player or anything like that. But, I always loved the game. And I jokingly say my favorite sports are football and hockey. So, and I think it's the physicality of those. And basketball comes in there real close. But I love where women's basketball is, especially today. But this gave me an opportunity to enjoy a sport and be involved in it, but also to get back to the community and empower and work with youth and girls. And that's really what I wanted to do. I have, for my college education, I have a minor in women's studies. I went to a private women's college.
That's fitting.
Which is very interesting. My friends are like, why would you do that? And it was a wonderful experience. But that kind of led into my decision to come to the Hall of Fame. And that was 21 plus years ago. And never have I have a day that has been boring.
Oh, I can only imagine.
It is always different. My to-do list is never done. Sometimes it's 2 pages, sometimes it's 6. Sometimes I write on there, wake up and check it off just to have something checked off. But it is an exciting place, and it is an ever-changing place. And I do feel like I'm able to give back.
So what were the early days like?
It was different. We had a much larger staff when I started. We were still under the Greater Knoxville Sports Center heading. So we worked under them, and they oversaw kind of our financials and things like that. And then in 2012, I had a long conversation with Kim Bumpus, who is the president of Visit Knoxville. And she said, you know what, having the hall under us doesn't fit our mission. And it doesn't. And I said, I understand. And we made the decision, the two of us, to separate the two. And so that happened in July of 2012. And so ever since then, the Hall of Fame has been its own standalone operation, which has been good for the Hall of Fame, and it is the right thing for Visit Knoxville also. We still work together on a regular basis and are good partners and have to be for tourism in Knoxville. And we have the same vision of making Knoxville a great place for not only our community, but for others to come into our community because of the impact it has on us.
We're very fortunate here in Knoxville. We have so many standout names when it comes to women's basketball. Of course, Pat Summitt comes to mind, Tamika Catchings. You have so many names that we could go down. For those who have never been to the Hall of Fame, talk about just its significance, just even outside of Lady Vol basketball, the significance of women's basketball.
So women's basketball has changed so much, really in the last 2 to 3 years. For example, last year at the Final Four, the women's game was sold out. It was a magical experience. It was sold out. The fans were excited to be there. You couldn't get a ticket at all. And we have the opportunity and the privilege to showcase our Hall of Famers on the court. And that's just a great experience, not only for the Hall of Fame, but for us, for the Hall of Famers and us. It gives us an opportunity to showcase who we are and where we live here in Knoxville, where the Hall of Fame lives, which is what I really want to say. So the Hall of Fame is an international Hall of Fame. Is it a museum? Is it an attraction? It's a Hall of Fame. It doesn't really fit. It fits in a lot of different categories. But being an international Hall of Fame, we recognize all levels of women's basketball, from the youth up to the professionals. So that means, we're not the University of Tennessee. Now, when guests come in, they see the University of Tennessee, and they see Pat, and they see Tamika, and they see Shamiqua, and there's more and more. Tennessee is number 2 on the number of inductees in the Hall of Fame right now. Obviously, that changes every year. But the impact of the University of Tennessee and significantly Pat Summitt, that's where it goes, is great on the story of women's basketball because of what she did. And I feel like where women's basketball now and the television production of the games, the exposure that the women are getting, stands somewhat on Pat's shoulders, because she was the one that really had that happen in the early days. Now, 50s and 60s, there were great things happening with other schools. Now Connecticut is the one to beat. I mean, LSU's coming up there, but women's basketball has changed. They just announced last week Dawn Staley's a contract that she received, and yesterday it was Kim Mulkey's contract at LSU. So the women are making, in the coaching, finally a little bit of money, but that's the ones you don't hear about. You don't hear about all the others. And the players are still, there's some areas are struggling. We probably all remember the controversy a few years ago with the weight room, the women, what they had versus the men, the food, the whole thing. But we've made great progress, and that's what's important is, yes, we've come from a long way, but as women, we have persevered and continue to grow the game and make sure the game is going to the next level. It's been a slow road, not as fast as any of us want, but we're getting the exposure now, and I think that's key. And it's really important to remember that here in Knoxville, we have an international Hall of Fame. We are not connected to the University of Tennessee. We are not connected to the state of Tennessee. We're very proud to be here, but we are international.
Is that the selling point to get people through those doors, just to see the progression of the game throughout the world?
Absolutely. So our mission is to honor the past, celebrate the present, and promote the future. Obviously, to honor the past, that is to recognize the history of the game from 1892. And when you think of 1892, I wasn't born then, thank goodness.
Same.
I probably would have been the rebel child, not wanting to wear the items and so forth. But it was started in 1892 by Cinda Berenson at Smith College in Massachusetts. Last year, we renamed our award trophy that they received to the Berenson, which is the right name for it because it represents Cinda Berenson and what she did at Smith College. Cinda Berenson heard about the game of men's basketball that was happening with Dr. Naismith in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Okay. 20
miles down the road, Cinda went and met with him and said, I want to observe. Dr. Naismith was gracious. They had an amicable relationship, and she took the game back and changed it, obviously, for the women because it was 1892. Women were not supposed to physical exertion unless for levels of a private college. They weren't at that level.
Right.
So she adapted the game to women, and that's how it all started. So women's basketball started just a few months after men's basketball. And most sports, you don't see that. So it's interesting that women's basketball has been around almost as long as men. So then the second part of our mission statement is to celebrate the present. and we do that. The Final Four, our Hall of Famers, recognizing those. The activities we do at the Hall of Fame, the education program, the outreach, that is the present, and then the future. What is the future? What is the future of women's basketball? What we've seen in the last 5 years has been amazing. But the future is those young women that are wanting to play the game. When I see a 2 or 3-year-old dribbling a basketball, it makes me so happy. And it is so important for us to promote the game, and it's not just the game. It is to promote the sport in the right way, for the youth to understand where they came from, because you need to know that history. I don't care what it is. The history is so important. It is who makes up who you're going to be.
That's right. It's the foundation.
It is.
Yeah.
And to make sure they're doing it at the right way, that they are respecting the game and playing it in the right way. So that's kind of our mission statement. And everything we do, we say, how does that fit into our mission statement? And if it doesn't, then we don't need to be doing it. And there are those checkpoints where I'm like, we really want to do this, but how does it fit within the mission statement?
How exciting is it to put on the Hall of Fame ceremonies? I got the chance to attend one, and I'm not a sports person. I became one once I got to Knoxville, because you just do.
You don't have a choice.
Yeah, you don't have a choice. But it was fascinating, because even the names I didn't know, because they're not maybe the front and center on the game, but all those stories behind the scenes were phenomenal. They were worthy of that Hall of Fame designation. What's it like putting those on?
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, well.
It is, I will say, I know the script, I write it, I know everything that's going to be said, I know the speeches, sometimes they go off, but I know what's going to happen. But when I am sitting there with the ceremony going on, I get chills. There's a tear in my eye, and it's because of those stories. It is the game of basketball, but it is the impact that that game has had on those individuals. And it is watching them tell their story and their appreciation for what the game has allowed them to do, but also speaking to the audience. And, if you're not a basketball fan, that ceremony is so much more than that.
It is.
You will walk out of there feeling so good and wanting to pick up a basketball, maybe.
Or at least watch a game or two.
At least pay attention to what's going on within the women's game.
Yes.
But every Hall of Famer has a different story. And I say that about people. With my interns and with my team, I will say everybody has a story. And that's what makes everybody unique. That's what makes each individual exciting. So those stories are really what the women's game is about at the Hall of Fame, telling those stories. But induction is just, I don't even know what to say. It is, we're to the point that it's on ESPN. We're working to get it on ESPN1. ESPN, if you're listening, we really want that to happen. Working hard on that. But our goal is to expose everyone to those stories. WATE, our partner, our media partner, you guys showed it last year in prime time. What an opportunity. What an opportunity for us as the Hall of Fame, but it's a great opportunity for the community to experience that ceremony. It's just a phenomenal night. And the thing that I can say about the induction ceremony and the things we do around induction weekend is those Hall of Famers that are there, they're accessible. It is not a problem to go up to Gino Auriemma or
anybody, Robin Roberts, you
Robin
name it.
Roberts,
Sheila
Tamika Catchings. I mean, they welcome you in. And I will tell you, a couple of years ago, Penny Taylor, great basketball player, international, went into the Hall of Fame, very gracious. Her partner is Diana Taurasi. They came. Diana had a game the night before. She flew in early that morning, no sleep. 2 kids were there, which was great. Seeing these players with their families is wonderful. But when Diana and Penny were leaving that night, Diana said to me, she said, Dana, I haven't been back to the Hall of Fame since I was in college. And I said, I remember, I gave you your tour with UConn when they came through. And that's important. But she said, the thing that I forgot is the feeling you get here. She said, this place is so special. There is a feeling. And that you can't recreate. And that feeling is the history of those that have come before and those that are currently playing the game, and how special that, I want to say sisterhood, but there are men that come into the Hall of Fame
That's
as
right.
coaches and contributors, but kind of that family of women's basketball, it is very unique.
What's the hardest part about your job?
Oh,
What's the part where you just go, I'm going to put that on my to-do list for tomorrow, and we're just going to be continued?
well, this week's been a fun one. I've worked 3 nights till 9:30, but that's me. I'm a little bit of a workaholic. We've moved furniture. We are in the process of clearing out space, creating another archive room because we need space. We are also receiving all of Pat Summit's artifacts. Tyler and I have been working very hard, and RB Summit, her ex-husband,
Yes.
has been so gracious of bringing stuff to us and helping us sort through and wanting to tell a little bit more of the story. And we're working on a Pat Summit exhibit, which will be great. It's called The Legacy. We are doing the fundraising now for that. And the hardest part of my job is there's so many ideas and so many great things we want to do, and not having the funding to do that, and working on the funding, and having a very small staff. And I don't think people really realize, but we have a full-time staff of 4. We have a part-time staff of 13, and that's to do all events and all functions that we do at the Hall of Fame. And we're open right now, Monday or Tuesday through Saturday. We're on our fall hours, but then in the spring we're open, 6 days a week. None of that is a bad thing. It's all a good thing.
Okay.
But that is a struggle, and it's a struggle that all nonprofits have. There's some statistics out there that most nonprofits, Hall of Fames, I'll start it over, Hall of Fames, which are nonprofits, usually fail within 3 to 5 years.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Because the struggle is so hard getting the funding. It's corporate sponsorships, it's donors, it's all of those pieces coming together. We are very thankful for Knox County. They own the building that we are in, and we're very grateful for that. We manage it, take care of it, all of that good stuff. But every day is a struggle in that sense. But it's a labor of love. And I say that often, it is a labor of love. And my team has a passion for what the Hall of Fame stands for, and you can feel it, and we know it. And so when we have to do that extra little bit, there's never really any questioning. It's just an automatic, because we love the Hall of Fame and we love what it represents. Speaking of the Hall of Fame's failing, next year, 2024, is our 25th anniversary.
I know.
And
That's significant.
Oh my gosh, it is huge. We are so excited. Our goal is to bring as many of our past inductees back to Knoxville. We have a regular group that comes. We have about 20 to 30 that come back every year. A variety of different people, depending on who the Hall of Famers are for that year and the connections. But we want them to come back. We want them to come home. And we want our women's basketball fans and our women's basketball community to look at Knoxville and the Hall of Fame as home for them. It's hard for some Connecticut fans, but it's okay.
It's a goodwill offering. Just come.
It is all good, because this is the home of women's basketball. It is something, I am extremely proud of it. I want Knoxville to be proud of it. And I will say the women's basketball community, they embrace us, and that is so important. The hardest part is never getting everything done, never having the money to do everything you want to do, having way too many ideas to make it happen, but that's a good thing.
Do you have a favorite exhibit or a favorite artifact within the building?
Ooh, that's a good question. Favorite exhibit? Probably my favorite exhibit, it's not the most exciting one, to be honest, is the locker room. And that's the beginning of the game, the 1892. Like I mentioned earlier, working with Smith College this year, they sent us some of the original uniforms. They're purple. I was totally amazed. But looking at the rule books and how they played the game and how the women struggled then, because sports were not ladylike.
Right.
I mean, you're talking towards the end of the Victorian age, and they had to wear covering, like their hands down to their hands had to be covered, their necks had to be covered, their ankles had to be covered. So they were playing in woolen stockings, makeshift, they look like kind of ballet, or not ballet, jazz shoes or wrestling shoes, bloomers made out of linen or wool, and the same thing with the tops. And it wasn't a comfortable game to play, but it didn't matter because they only played a short period of time and then they had to go rest.
Wow.
And I'm assuming they fed them cookies and lemonade or whatever,
Right.
because it wasn't ladylike, and women were not able to be physically active at that point. The women that were playing at the basketball level, in the college
Right.
level. And that's interesting because people have been having babies in fields for years. That's when somebody says, this is tough. I'm like, oh, you know what?
Right.
We can do it.
Yeah,
There's
we're
nothing,
fine.
Yeah, we can do it. Mindset, we can do it. But when you look at the game, where it was to this point, I think that's where the locker room is my favorite. In that room, we have the 1901 rule book. And I just said about the rules, they're different. There is something beside that case that I found this year. I was at the hall working. It was way, way early in the morning. And it was the week of induction.
Okay.
We were recognizing the Dust Bowl girls, which was a group of women that played at a college in Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl. They were recruited from farms. And these people, when you say dirt poor, the Dust Bowl, they were dirt poor. And they were recruited to play basketball. And I was going through a box of things to put up of items that had been donated, putting the forms together, looking at the items. And one of the items was sent by a lady, and it was an autograph book from the early 1900s. And I opened it up, and I'm very carefully page by page because it's so fragile. And I get halfway through this autograph book where people wrote little poems and autographs. Back in the day, it was the thing. And all of a sudden I stumble upon these pictures of basketball players, and they're cut out like paper dolls. And I was like, what is this? So I keep looking, and it was Oklahoma Presbyterian College, which was the Dust Bowl girls. And this is the team.
Oh my goodness.
It gave me chills.
What a find.
And how did that's been sitting in my office, how did I find that at that time, the week of induction? And so I took all those little photos and I carefully, it was like rubber cement, they came off real easy, put those on display. And the reason that's important to me is because there was a reason I found that at that time. And so that's on display at the Hall of Fame. Probably one of our other valued items, we do have the letter that offered Pat Summitt her position at the University of Tennessee. The typed out letter, so that is on display. There's other things, but I think it's the history that speaks to me so much.
Let's talk about you personally. I was asking you, we were just talking kind of about life before we got started. And you said last year you had a medical setback. And it was fascinating because I've never heard much about it. What happened to you last November?
It's interesting, not where I expected my life to go. So last spring, I started having like sinus infections, and anybody that lives in East Tennessee knows that's
Par for the course.
part
Right.
of it,
Right.
And so I thought, well, this is just normal, and it was just nonstop, not feeling good, but could never pinpoint. And the doctors really were like, we're trying to figure this out. So the Alabama football game, that's how the great victory. That's how I look at when things really started changing. I was having a really hard time walking. My gait was off, and I knew something was wrong. And I had to have help walking back to the Hall of Fame that night. And then I told my daughter, I said, I know I'm walking like I'm drunk, and I've had nothing to drink but water. So my gait was off, and it went downhill from there. So by October, the end of October, I'd been to the emergency room twice. Couldn't figure out what it was. And the third time I went to the emergency room, they admitted me. And we had a traveling nurse. My husband and I were in the emergency room. It's late at night. We'd been there for 10 and a half hours waiting. And the traveling nurse told us to the side. She said, I can't say this to you, but don't leave. Refuse to leave. I think I know what's going on. She left the room. My husband and I just looked at each other. It was just a few minutes. The doctor came back in, and she said, we're admitting you.
Oh, my God.
And I said, okay. So they admitted me. The next day, I had 4 MRIs, 2 CT scans, 28 vials of blood, and a spinal tap within one day. The doctor came back in, and they said, we know what it is. It is Guillain-Barré. I said, what? I can't even say it.
Right. When you told me, I was like, I've never heard of it.
Right. So Guillain-Barré syndrome, and I refer to it as GBS, which is the short term. At first I was calling it Guillain-Barré. I thought it was like Gilligan's Island or something, I guess, which was not a fantasy and was not fun. But I was totally went to a stage of totally paralyzed. When I went to the hospital in the emergency room that time, I was on a walker and could barely walk, and I progressed to a wheelchair. The next day after I was admitted, they started me on IV treatments, which is plasma, and it's a special kind of plasma to reverse the symptoms of Guillain-Barré. And what it does is the sheath that covers your nerves,
Okay.
your body is fighting itself. And so it's attacking the sheath that protects your nerves, and it's killing it. And so there's holes, and it's totally disappearing around your nerves, which just exposes your nerves. So that's where the paralysis starts. And it was an adventure that I didn't expect. And I had been saying to my husband, I kept saying, I feel like my body is fighting itself. And I've been saying that for a few months. But that's really what was happening. And so I was in the hospital for 3 weeks, in a wheelchair, paralyzed. Up, I could do anything, had to have help doing anything. Went from the hospital to a nursing home for rehab. Great experience there. I won't say the name of it, but it was a phenomenal experience.
That's good.
But I started therapy, and I had occupational and physical therapy regularly. And within a few weeks, the first day I walked like 2 steps, holding onto a walker. And I gradually got from the wheelchair to the walker to the cane by the time I left. My hands, I could not even open a tube of toothpaste. I could not hold a fork. I could not hold a pencil. It was the most frustrating thing because I'm a high energy, ready to go person,
Right.
you know. And it was very frustrating, but it was also a wake-up call that this could happen to anyone. You know, something that you don't know about can happen, and life is fragile. And you can't put off things, you know. You've got to live life for the day.
Would you say that's what you learned from this experience?
It is, and I should have learned more, like slow down, you know.
Yeah.
Calm down, because the thing that you need to do once you have it, besides the plasma treatment, is it is affected by stress.
Oh.
It is affected if you don't get rest. So when, like the final 4, when I'm going, when I come back, it's like, okay, my body is shutting down. And I can feel when my body is starting to shut down. Mm-hmm. So I'm in the good phase. My neurologist said, you're in the top 1%. He said, how you progressed so fast, but it's a mindset. Because I said, I am walking out of here. My last day of physical therapy, I said, I'm gonna run across the little court thing outside. And my physical therapist, he said, I don't think that's a good idea. It took him a while to get used to my personality first, and he just got used to me, I guess I would say, because he was wonderful. But I said, I'm gonna run. And he's like, Dana, I don't think so. And I said, no. And no, it wasn't like a beautiful run,
right?
But I ran across the field because I was determined that this is not gonna be my life. So where I'm at now, everything is back, except for I still have the neuropathy. I still have...
Is it the tingling?
It is a tingling and a pain.
Okay.
I have it in my hands and my feet. My feet are not as bad. I don't know if the nerves in the feet are just... I know your hands have so many nerves in them. Up to 6 years for that to come back is what they're telling me. So I'm doing the best I can. I live each day, learning how to write. I was like, oh, is my handwriting going to be ugly? And it reminded me of being in grade school and getting my first non-A in handwriting, or penmanship is what it was called at the time.
That's
and
right.
It devastated me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Miss Martin, my teacher, is going to be so upset that I can't write again. She's going to give me a C. But for some reason, it all came back, and I started with a pencil, like a preschooler would do.
The big chunky pencil,
Yeah.
and going slow.
Exactly. I had a fork that had the big chunky styrofoam thing, and you'd stab it like a caveman. So the progression of where I was to how I ended up was great. I had great rehab therapists in occupational and physical therapy. I can't thank them enough because they inspired me, they motivated me to move forward.
So obviously you're back at work and life is back on track. What is next for you? When you think of the Hall of Fame, Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, what's the big picture here as we wrap up?
Oh, wow. We've got a lot of things going on this year with the 25th anniversary. We're getting ready to announce a 25 for 25 campaign. It's a capital campaign, $25 million for 25 years. If we raise that, that puts the Hall of Fame in a really good position for the future, which is what I want. The second piece is we are developing an academy. It's going to be released really soon. And within that academy, it is the HER Academy, H-E-R, Health, Education, Respect.
Ooh.
Health, mental and physical health. You know, this is for our youth. They need both. Mm-hmm. It's not just about your body, it's about your mind. Mm-hmm. How are we feeding our minds? How are we taking care of our whole body?
Mm-hmm. Our girls especially need that.
Absolutely. Education. You can never have enough education. I am a voracious reader. I have 3 books beside my bed right now, and it's always one's inspirational, one is business related for development, and the third one's junk.
Yes.
It's you got to let your mind just get lost. And I love junk novels. So that's so I'm always trying to make myself a better person, learn new things, and so that's that education piece. And then the respect, oh my gosh, the world needs respect. How did we get to where we are now? It kills me. I have this conversation with my family all the time. I'm like, we're better than this. We
can be.
As a country are better than this. We need to understand that people are different. Everyone has a story, but we need to have respect. You know, I was talking to a homeless man yesterday on Market Square during lunch. You know, that's respect, because who knows who he is and where he came from. You know, you treat everyone the way you would want to be treated. That's just the way it is. So teaching those 3 things to our programs, and there are 12 components underneath it. One of them is the HERO program, and that is health, education, respect, opportunities. And that is our in the schools and out of the schools education program. And there's all different pieces of that. It is attached to STEAM, but that is the reason we changed it to HERO instead of just HER is because it's boys and girls.
Okay.
We want everybody to be a hero in life. And that's
so
going
many
to come
outreach
through.
things.
It's going to come through respect. It's going to come through the opportunities for them. What opportunities are out there for them? And what opportunities are there for them to give back? Because it's so important to start at a young age. It's about you taking care of yourself, but it's also about giving back. And we need to teach our youth that. The other piece is a Girl Scout program. One piece is the Pat Summit Leadership group that we're working with Pat's Definite Dozen. And that's really for like 5th grade to like 8th or 9th grade girls, because we lose girls at that age, you know, and we need to realize that those girls are beginning to become the women and the mothers of the future. And what we can train them with of having those opportunities and learning that self-respect and all of those things, they're gonna hopefully teach to their children or whoever they impact as they become adults. So that's a key piece to it. We're opening up a podcast. We're starting a podcast.
Oh, excuse me. No, wait. What are we doing with this podcast?
Well, let me tell you about the podcast. So we have Dr. Sarah Hillier, who is the head of the University of Tennessee Center for Sport, Peace, and Society. Fascinating program. If you haven't seen her program, go look at it. And Michelle Marciniak, standout Lady Vol. They are going to host our podcast, and it's going to be recognizing Hall of Famers. You know, they'll have guests on there. Some will be Hall of Famers, some will be basketball players, some will be coaches, and it's going to be basketball, but with a twist. It's going to be fun. It's going to be energetic. It's going to be something that people don't want to miss, and it's going to be every other week.
I like that.
Locations will change.
Okay.
Who knows? It's like, where's Waldo? Where are they going to be? So that's in the works to start by the end of the year, and we're very excited about that. So they'll be at the Final Four. You know, they'll be talking to people at the Final Four, and it'll be exciting. With that, then there's more components to it. Talking about the Center for Sport, Peace, and Society at the University of Tennessee, and a lot of people don't know how we are involved on the international level. So we are a subcontractor for the State Department grant that hosts that program. And that is the program that brought the Afghan basketball team to Knoxville. So we are in the background of that program. So our international reach with that program, they have been able to hit 83 countries.
Wow.
And make an impact. And the Hall of Fame's been there most of the way, supporting them. You know, one of my favorite memories from the Hall of Fame is it's been 9 years ago, maybe 10, we had Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Pakistan, I can't remember, there was a sixth one. These youth coming in, and I say youth, it was like high school age, coming into the Hall of Fame with the Center for Sport, Peace, and Society's program. That evening, watching them there and interacting and watching them take pictures and having this flag up but not that flag because of what could be seen politically. That evening, I went out into the rotunda area at the Hall of Fame. Around the statue, it has honor the past, celebrate the present, promote the future. And I looked out, and these girls from these different countries are laying on the floor, circling around, holding hands. I will never forget that moment. And they were looking up at the statue, and they said, we want to remember this moment. And looking at the path and what those women have done in their careers, in their countries, to promote peace through sport has been amazing. So the Hall of Fame, yes, it's a building. Yes, it's the history. Yes, it's where women are progressing in the sport today. Yes, it is that youth piece, but it's so much more. And it is not just Knoxville. Knoxville is our home, and we're proud to be here. I couldn't imagine us being anywhere else. Wouldn't want to live anywhere else, so that makes it an easy one. But the Hall of Fame, you know, what is the Hall of Fame? You know, there's so many pieces to it.
You are awesome. I can tell you're the busiest woman in Knoxville. Dana Hart, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Women's
Tearsa.
Basketball Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Absolutely, anytime.